How? Black Mesa is a game which needs no introductions, being one of the prime examples of a game remake done right with a good balance of keeping the original intact with better visual fidelity, and in some instances fixing issues the original might have had. Among these issues was the inclusion of a gorgeous looking purple hat, which was sorely missing from the original Half-Life from 1999. This absolutely prized piece of decorative headwear is so goddamn beautiful they gave it a special achievement which requires Gordon Freeman to use his MIT degree and theoretical physics knowledge to transport this downright amazing top hat to the border world of Zen for a special achievement on their Steam profile. Welcome to this special episode of Challenge Chronicles. This is beating Black Mesa for the Rarest Specimen achievement. Now, before I get into the rules of this challenge, you might be wondering who the hell I even am and where did $1 Million Bill and Fettuccine Alfredo go? Hi, I'm Sparkster Morgan. I make videos on stupid Nintendo games and was recently contacted by an interdimensional businessman with a briefcase to complete a challenge while he held one of his most recent hires in stasis for a period of time between assignments. Whatever the hell that means. So I guess to bring them both back, I'll have to complete this challenge. Starting a new game brings us to the same place every playthrough of Half-Life starts, in a rail car that takes 10 real minutes to sit through, which is exactly enough time to make a sandwich or some 2-minute noodles, play with a roommate's dog for a little bit, and that's only 7 minutes of my time. After finally reaching the platform, we're finally let in and told that we are in fact a sellout because we got rid of our ponytail. After exactly 2 minutes of crying in the corner because of such a horrific burn, we continue our way to the locker room, but not before making a pit stop in the break room where we absolutely decimate this microwave casserole.
Stop fucking with the microwave!
For no particular reason, Gordon just decimates this dude's casserole without any rhyme or reason. Absolute giga chat. We finally get to the locker room, help out our boy who's taking what I can only assume is the mother of all mud monkeys by giving him some fresh, extra thin one-ply toilet paper, and finally climb into our hazardous environment suit. We don't delay much further and start heading our way down to the anti-mass spectrometer chamber, seeing foreboding and dangerous signs of things to come as we go. After the obligatory cameos from Dr. Kleiner and Eli Vance, we make our way to the test chamber and decline to hear a story about a man named Stanley from this particular scientist.
This is a rare opportunity for us. This is the purest sample we've seen yet.
Turning on the machine, we get a light show with lens flares that make even J.J. Abrams blush. We push the sample into the beam and watch as all hell breaks loose as we witness the resonance cascade. Waking up from one too many pints of Guinness, we start climbing our way back up to where we came from with one goal in mind. That damn hat. We meet a few members of the science team along the way, inadvertently cause their untimely demise, and meet up with a security guard. I brought the guard up with me to the entrance as I was under the impression he needed to open the main door, only to find out I was wrong because it was already open when we got there. So really, I should have just left him for dead and taken his gun. Ignoring the begging pleas of a scientist hanging on for dear life, I do a little crouch jump sequence and grab our prized possession, the top hat itself. The challenge has now truly begun. Now, there is a reason why this is considered one of the most difficult achievements in Black Mesa. One of the quirks of how props and physics objects work in the Source engine is you can't use any weapons while holding onto anything, as pressing left click will make Gordon throw whatever the hell he is holding at the time, meaning you will have to put the hat down every single time you wish to attack an enemy or defend yourself. Now, you might be thinking, oh, I could just wear the hat and use my guns at the same time just fine. However, Gordon Freeman, despite graduating from MIT and having a PhD in theoretical physics and having observed multiple teleportations experiments, is a complete and utter fuckhead who feels the need to make life more difficult for himself. Navigating this early section with the top hat isn't too taxing, dropping it every now and then to dispatch a few head crabs and zombies with our newly acquired crowbar. Pushing further into the facility, we also find our first real weapon, the pistol. Our survivability with this has just gone up by a considerable margin. Very quickly, we encounter our first major obstacle for this challenge: ladders. Climbing ladders in the Source engine is janky to say the least. Climbing while carrying a prop is even fucking worse, as you need to hold it at the right position to prevent it from dropping, and if I drop it in a major climb, I have to reload a save. Quick loading and saving are incredibly clutch for this challenge and will be abused multiple times to save my ass. Along our route, we encounter 3 new enemies to keep track of: the Barnacles, the Vortigons, and the Hound Eyes. The bane of my existence. While not really a threat on their own, the Hound Eye's main form of attack will send map props flying everywhere, including the hat, which is a major pain in the ass to deal with. Disposing them as soon as possible is imperative to our progress. Moving further along, we make our way to this large elevator and perform the moves that made LeBron cry against these headcrabs who feel the need to continuously leap at me with no purpose. Safely making it down there, we meet another threat to our progress. The bull squids. These bastards launch acidic spit in our direction, which can also knock around nearby props, the hat included. Taking them out quickly and efficiently is our best bet for survival in this piece of shit challenge. After a short swim in most likely contaminated water, we reach a small platforming section which was slightly ass-clenching as one mistake would send us plummeting to our untimely death. The early sections of the facility are a breeze. Trouble really starts to ramp up once we reach Office Complex. Before we reach any trouble, we acquire the second weapon of our arsenal, the shotgun. Dealing with enemies is going to be far easier with this on our side. The office complex requires us to crawl through vents, which isn't difficult at all. The real problem is these bitchy ass little headcrabs who feel a need to continuously jump in our face by saying words with large emphasis on the huh sounds, which makes me smell their rank stanky ass breath. Each time I want to deal with these things, I have to put the hat down and thwack them with my crowbar, but in doing so, I also run the risk of hitting the hat which will send it flying. And not just that, the ventilation also breaks in one of these sections, straining the hat just out of reach where I can't grab it by normal means. Thankfully, I had a few hand grenades and was able to blow the hat down to where I was, but this wouldn't be the only time I had to throw a hand grenade in this particular vent.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Continuing on, we reached the freezer section, which wasn't too bad. Dropping the hat to kill a few enemies was par for the course really. Pressing forwards, we reach an elevator shaft with a security guard and scientist, and this is where I made my first critical mistake of the challenge.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Of course, being the smooth-brained moron that I am, I forgot to quick save after freeing the hat, which would bite me in the ass once I reached the end of the elevator shaft. Once again, prop logic ended up with me leaving the hat on top of the elevator, and since it was a load zone, I wouldn't be able to recover it. And since I bravely thought that I had a local quick save on hand, I was sent back to the office complex, which meant I had to brave the almighty freezer once again and most of office complex. Once I had remedied my stupid mistake and sat in the corner for 5 minutes, I promptly saved and continued on to We Got Hostiles, seeing one of my scientist brethren running towards a landmine. I politely sent him to the Shadow Realm before he could trip it because he was in my damn way.
No other reason?
This is one of the trickiest sections to deal with, as I had to avoid the laser lines that would activate both landmines and sentry turrets. Naturally, being the big bumbling buffoon that I am, I tripped the first set of turrets and dealt with the immediate consequences of 50 caliber rounds being shot into my soft fleshy body. Blowing it up with a hand grenade, I venture forward slightly and get hit with a bunch of randomly spawning headcrabs, which is going to be a continuous trend going forward. I also encountered a bunch of Vortigons in the cafeteria area buying their zinger boxes for the day's work. Dodging the lasers is simple work, except for here where I trip and get popped with hundreds of new bullet holes in my HEV suit. Finally passing by them, I absent-mindedly forgot to read the wet floor sign and both lost the hat and my life in the process. Getting past that minor obstacle, we make it to the most impactful scene in the entire game. The military is here, and they're not exactly here to help. I get revenge on this Call of Duty wannabe and steal his MP5 SMG. It's become quite clear that the military wants all involved with the Resonance Cascade dead, which means there will be larger combat encounters requiring us to dispatch of all enemies before we can safely proceed with the hat. This is how most combat encounters are going to play out. We need to put the hat somewhere where it's easy to retrieve and pray to our Lord Gaben that something doesn't cause the hat to go flying into an unreachable spot. Trust me, it gets difficult to manage that later on. After dropping a clean 15-player killstreak and getting our advanced UAV on these soldiers, we make our way topside for the first time and immediately ignore the war zone we find ourselves in and go back to the underground where we belong like the mole men we are. One of the science team members informs us that the Lambda team might have the solutions to all of our problems and sends us on our way, which brings us to the rail track. Feeling slight fear of things to come, I just opted to b-hop on the rails with the hat as it was safer than losing the hat from some janky collision these cars can cause. This leads us to a glowing green river, which the ticking sounds of a Geiger counter politely informs me is quite radioactive. Not wanting to trample on the hallowed grounds this series has already produced, I opted to avoid touching it, as having a third arm growing from my stomach, although useful, would be rather alarming as they don't typically grow there. Jumping into the pipe led us to a larger section of the glowing sea, where there were more bull squids who ended up taking more of my health than I would prefer to them doing. I took care of them quickly and opted to take a longer route to recover some of my lost suit energy and health. The elevator ride brought us to one of the sections that gave me a bit of trouble in the early sections of Black Mesa, the blast pit. Immediately exiting the lift brought a whole bunch of hound eyes, which I dealt with as quickly as I could, and entered the silo itself. The main threat we have to deal with here is the tentacle, which isn't too bad if you play carefully. However, if you're locking around the top hat, this very quickly becomes a nightmare with how this fight is supposed to go. Normally, you just go down to the lower levels and activate the required components to turn on the rocket engine and torch the tentacles, but this requires both a crowbar to open the silo doors and to climb ladders quickly so you don't get shanked by the rejected Cthulhu arms here. Heading down to the first chamber, we immediately see some sleeping hound eyes, and not wanting to wake them up, I throw an explosive device at them to let them die peacefully in their sleep. Naturally, of course, karma bites me in the ass, as the next room is filled with barnacles who want to eat my hat and myself. And of course, another fucking bull squid. Taking out the ones immediately in my way, I press the elevator button and get harassed by hound eyes. Not taking kindly to their presumptuous accusations of cold-blooded murder of their sleeping colleagues, I too send them to the cold dark hell from whence they came. Boarding the elevator, it's clear that Gordon has eaten one too many wicked wings in his time, as the cable snaps and sends us plummeting into a pool of Mountain Dew. A scientist tells us that he's too scared to find his friend who clearly died up ahead, so I make sure they're reunited in one way or another by creating more job openings at the science team. Apply now. This part wasn't too difficult. I just had to align the pipe with the top of the silo and pressing 2 buttons, taking out a few enemies and one bitch-ass scientist who told me to piss off. After lining up the top part, we were able to head back to the next section of the silo, which was a slight pain in the ass to get with on the hat. Fortunately, I was able to throw the hat up through a gap on the bottom floor and just climb up to the top with the ladders, save for a little bit of health loss thanks to the tentacles. The next section went relatively similar, except for the start where I fell way too hard and lost most of my health and was brutally attacked by another fucking bull squid. After reloading the save and going down the correct way, also dealing with the bull squid in a non-hostile way, I made it to the main puzzle. Turning on the turbine and retrieving the hat, I used the updraft and flew upwards into a small shaft and was brought into a room with some valves to activate. Clearing away all the enemies and activating all the valves, I was able to return to the blast pit with the tentacles and struggling my way up. I eventually decided to just leave the hat in a specific spot, as it was easier than trying to carry it all the way back up. Killing the tentacle with the unmatched power of the sun, I retrieved the hat and went down the hole from whence it came to claim my prize, a Desert Eagle 357 Magnum. Going past the corpse of what was once the tentacles, we align a large pipe and make our way to the next chapter, Power Up. Seeing the Gargantua, I hid in the railcar area first like the coward I am, not realizing I needed to make my way upwards immediately before correcting my mistake with a quick load. We meet a guard holding on to the last bit of life that he has and tells us the obvious that we need to take out the big guy before we can proceed. Doing so not because he told me to, because I felt like it, we went down further with the hat to try and power on the amplifiers to kill the big guy with electricity. Reaching the next floor, we find out the military wants Gordon dead, by name. This combat encounter was very sloppy on my part. I handled things terribly and took more damage than I would have preferred to have. After clearing out the soldiers in this area, we go further down and activate the terminals. Starting our way back up, we get ambushed by more soldier boys and take them out with my trusty crowbar and a polite teabag for scaring me. It seems like they all crowded into the area we were previously in and swarmed it with more reinforcements, meaning I had to drop the hat numerous times to take them all out. Heading all the way back up, we were able to activate a few switches and fry the Gargantua with the unmatched power of a 20-watt USB-C Apple charger. And that is how it's done. You were cooked like a bit of macaroni or whatever. Defeating the Gargantua brought us to the worst part of this challenge, on a rail. The problem with this section stems from the fact the rail car needs to be brought to all checkpoints to proceed. However, the way this acts with the top hat is nothing short of a goddamn nightmare. Whenever you activate the speed control on a rail car, it causes the hat to bump a little bit. And with how prop logic works in Source, it doesn't exactly want to move with the rail car like you would expect it to, which required a lot of micromanaging on my end. Of course, I ended up screwing something up and reloading a save, which meant I was at the start of the bloody chapter again, which wasn't too annoying, but I felt so stupid not quick saving in the right spot. Eventually, I was able to progress correctly, where I was then ambushed by a bunch of security turrets. Making short work of them using my near limitless supply of frag grenades, I was able to board the rail car again, woohoo, and struggled to get it moving while holding onto the hat for dear life. I inched forwards at a snail's pace because I didn't want to risk losing anything and was politely asked to disembark so the soldiers could punch my ticket and my scalp smooth off the top of my head. I disembarked the train and watched the Vortigons fight the soldiers for a bit before proceeding and finding out the military definitely wants Gordon Freeman dead. After dying one time, I clear away all the military ahead and proceed onwards to the silo which houses a rocket the Lambda team wanted to launch to possibly reverse the effects of the resonance cascade. However, the military had seized control of it and aborted the launch. Being the ever-kind Samaritan we are, we kill all the members of the HECU blocking the rocket and prime it ready for the takeoff. Almost losing the hat a few times in the process thanks to janky source logic. We take the slowest cart ride to another elevator and continue on a little further, getting ambushed by some soldiers on a cart of their own. After dying only once, I take them all out and finally see the outside, listening in on some soldiers talking mad shit about me. I politely dispute those rumors with my Desert Eagle and clear the rocket side of all military personnel, using their own machine gun set up against them before finishing them with my personal arsenal. Making my way inside, I kill all the remaining soldiers and launch the rocket. Going further along brings us to the next chapter, and another rail car that gives me just a little bit of trouble. Completing the water-based puzzles wasn't too hard here with the hat, leaving it to float while I worked the puzzle out was easy enough, and I didn't encounter too many soldiers as I went further in. I made it to the fish tank where I acquired a new weapon for the loadout, the crossbow. Killing the fish and opening the door under the water, we proceed onwards to the generator room where I found my employer watching me from a distance. Following a short platforming segment, I found my way into another freezer and cleared it out of there as fast as I could, not wanting to get freezer burn. Crawling into a vent, I came out to a hallway where there were some Vortigons waiting for me. Taking care of them brought in more through teleportation and presented me with another slow elevator ride. The Hat and I are growing tired of them. A security guard tried to speak to me but was quickly assassinated by another enemy faction, the Black Ops. The Black Ops are quick, nimble, and fire fast, which means dealing with them quickly is essential for carrying the Hat forwards. Also, their bullets knock the fucking thing around. Of course it does. Why wouldn't it? After narrowly avoiding the Black Ops, I get knocked out by the military in a cheap shot ambush where they try and dispose of me by throwing me into a trash compactor. They were nice enough to not double tap me and left my hat in an easy to retrieve area. Being reborn from the garbage, I was able to make my way out and crawl back into the facility in a waste processing plant. This area was actually pretty easy to navigate, only needing to engage in combat with a head crabs as I only had a crowbar to my name to start off with. The further into the plant I went, the more I was able to add to my weapon pool, refilling my suit energy and health in the process. Finally, we made our way to an annoying ladder which was blocked by a metal grate which took me more than a few tries to climb in with the hat. Braving the hardest climb of the challenge, I reached an area with an electrified fence, and I bravely killed all the sleeping hound eyes and leapt over it. Turning it off while I was at it. Going through this door, I had successfully made it to questionable ethics. This section wasn't too long. I met up with a security guard and we made a plan to find some scientists to let us outside. We kill some soldiers on our way and go deeper into the lab, finding them on the other side of a locked door, prompting me to go upstairs and find a way down. Standard procedure as before, dropping the hat to take care of the enemies, pressing forward, activating the laser grid to melt the hole in the wall, and we can jump down. During this encounter we get our first energy weapon, the tower cannon. This will make dealing with some of the tankier enemies later on far easier. Once the lasers were powered up, I dropped down into the chamber with the scientists and shut down the cutter machine that I was blocking them in. Stepping back into the foyer, I threw the hat into a corner and fought off an HECU ambush, finishing them off with relative ease, and proceeding onwards once the door was open for me. There was some more HECU in my path outside, and once again proved no problem except for a major loss in ammo and suit energy. We finally made it to surface tension. Pushing out of the tunnel, we're immediately faced with a dam and a foothold of HECU personnel. Not wanting to be apprehended again, I give them the second wave of the Merc murdering mayhem and drain the dam, which sends us spiraling back out. It was at this point in the process of streaming I encountered a few lag issues, so the next stream would be split into 3 video files. We press on further up the desert and reached a minefield, which was a little tricky given the fact a bunch of headcrabs spawned randomly. Safely passing over the minefield brought me to the hardest part of this challenge yet so far, the cliffside. Remember when I said putting the hat down and taking care of the enemies was essential? Yeah, well, doing that here has an increased risk of the hat going the way of Kirby. The rocky geometry of the cliffside and the fact the soldiers would lob grenades my way made this part just a touch more difficult than it had any right to be. What ended up working for me here was wedging the hat against a rock and going slightly downstream at its very top so I could move ahead, kill the soldiers, and progress forward. I ended up doing this tactic a handful of times in this area, as the further you progress along the cliff, the more enemies attack you from annoying siege angles that are simply hard to ignore. Finally, I reached a wider area and acquired the rocket launcher, which I immediately put to good use by taking out the attack helicopter which was in my fucking way. After performing the Shawshank Redemption crawl through some sewerage tunnels, we find some soldiers who have set up camp. Throwing my hat to the side, I proceeded to evict them from life and destroyed their tank with my newly acquired rocket launcher. I pushed forward to some trip mines and threw a barrel in their path to get rid of them so I didn't have to juggle the hat or protect my soft fleshy body. Passing that, I encountered a security guard hanging on to the last thread of life he had, and a scientist emerged from his hiding spot to try and help him, only to get the Charlie Kirk treatment by a sniper's nest.
We are Charlie Kirk!
I of course responded in the only way I thought was appropriate by launching an anti-tank missile into his now non-existent face. We cross the electric fence and power it off, allowing us to get access to the building and are faced with the scariest part of this entire run, a thermonuclear device. This part was a little stressful because unlike earlier sections where you can just tank explosions or even set off the trip mines like it's nothing, this section doesn't let you do that. If you slip, the entire place blows up and goes back to the start. The safest way I was able to navigate was by hoisting the hat over carefully and only holding out the crowbar. Once I reached the main room, I had a little more room to move around, but still had to be cautious to not set off the trip mines. Eventually, I was able to leap onto the elevator and acquired a hive hand. Oh, and my game crashed. Thanks. Fortunately, I quick saved as I got on the platform, but Christ, I didn't want to redo this section. We meet another security guard, take out more goons, placing the hat out of harm's way and acquiring a whole bunch more ammo before proceeding onwards. I took out more Vortigons, soldiers, and alien grunts and gained control of the stationary rocket launcher, which I used to take out a tank blocking the path, like the fat f*** it is. Reaching the parking garage, I killed every enemy in one of the largest combat encounters so far thanks to the alien grunts present. We're introduced to a new mechanic here, the jump pad. This mechanic caused me a bunch of problems later on.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Reaching the top, I sit and watch the aliens and soldiers fight for a bit before finishing the job. After that little snafu, I climb onto the very organic looking vents and deal with the snarks for the first time, losing the hat in an unreachable location and reloading a save to kill all the snarks again. I clear out the ambush from the soldiers and make my way outside where you guessed it, kill more soldiers. I reach a door that requires the guard to unlock, so I launched up topside, killed more snarks, and was targeted by 2 snipers' nests. Not feeling their vibe and not wanting to get the Charlie Kirk treatment, I died a few times before launching 2 anti-tank missiles at them, which took them out really quickly. Jumping down, a soldier tried to smoke me out of the pipes with a grenade, only to have the door blow out and squish him like a melon. Oh dear. After some more pipe navigation and valve turning, I find a guard who wants to sneak past the soldiers. Deciding to save my ammo for later on, I agreed to go sneaky and we avoided contact with the HECU. He unlocks the door for me and dies a horrible death off camera. The Lambda Lab is in sight, but so is a Gargantua. I climb on top of the tower and use the conveniently left behind mortar launcher to make short work of him and knock down the comms tower. Finally, the military has mostly given up on me, which means from here on out we'll be dealing with mostly Zen or Black Ops soldiers. I struggled just a little bit with the combat in this section, but managed to press on to the next area which required more swimming and ladders. After dying an extremely gruesome crushing death several times over, I make it past the cogwheels of death and kill more of the soldiers, collecting more ammo before reaching the largest combat arena of soldiers so far, and possibly in the entire game. I I threw my hat in a safe place and began massacring all military personnel in my way before finally reaching an elevator, which takes us all the way down to an ongoing battle between Xenian creatures and the remaining HECU, intervening on the side of peace before giving up and just killing everyone else instead. We go through a silo door and at long last are face to face with the Lambda complex. The first area was nothing of note, just a handful of Xenian creatures to deal with, and the second area had the last appearance of the Black Ops soldiers. The amount of cargo containers here made it difficult to deal with them all. I also managed to completely lose track of the hat in this section because it rolled into a dark corner, so I had to redo the whole encounter. I made it to the next section where I was ambushed by every Xenian creature in the book and damn near lost my life. After just a bit of trouble, I climbed up the ladder and past the scientist, who explained he needed to make sure I was who I said I was. The next room held a weapon I was looking forward to, the gluon gun. Before we can enter the Lambda labs, I had to activate the coolant systems, but those areas didn't actually give me any trouble, and nor do I really have much to say about it. So for the sake of it not being nap time, we'll just fast forward to actually reaching the Lambda lab. In my rush to finish off this video, I completely forgot to mention the teleportation section, probably because it took me so damn long to complete. This section was a complete pain in the arse and required at least 20 minutes to start, restart, jump through portals at slightly different times. It was just a pain in the arse, but eventually I got through it just fine. Entering into the lab, we are told that someone needs to close the gateway on the other side of Zen, and the Lambda team volunteered me without asking. How generous. This bitch-ass guard gives me the worst stink eye of all time, but I also graciously provides me with all the ammo I can carry. Contemplating whether or not I should blow a 357 Magnum-sized hole through his head, I also get equipped with a long jump module, which gives us a greater deal of movement options. Moving into the next room, they start powering up the teleporter, and as they do so, aliens start piling into the room. Opting to just care about the hat only, I bravely didn't engage with this fight very much and just ran around with the hat until it was time to go. Leaping into the time vortex from Doctor Who, we see our hat floating away from us and a peek of the creature who stole it from us. What a bitch. We finally reached the border world of Zen, losing the hat, which has been with us the whole time so far. It was at this point I had grown just a little bit attached to Mr. Hat, so being without him for the first time for a while was a bit emotional, for 5 seconds. We do a bit of low gravity platforming, navigating these floating rocks, falling into the abyss and never being seen again. Pretty standard stuff, honestly. After some light platforming, which took me longer than normal, I reached a cliff ledge where I was reunited with Mr. Hat. The second half of this run has fully started. The early sections of Zen are familiar to what we've done before. Basic enemies here and there, some light platforming, a few instances of putting the hat down to solve a puzzle. Pretty pedestrian stuff for an epic gamer like me. We're introduced to the explosive plant life here, which is a subtle reference to the fact that literally everything in Zen wants me dead. One of the things that sets Zen apart from the Earthbound levels is I don't have any convenient spots to put the hat down if I'm in a pinch, which made this segment on a tree branch an absolute pain in the ass because of the fucking hound eyes and stabby plants. Reloading another save because the hat went flying, I put the hat in a relatively safe spot, killed the hound eyes before progressing. There was a lot of stopping and starting in the early sections until we reached a new problem. Little explosive hound eyes. The problem with these little fuck-ass creatures is the fact they explode on contact, which deals a lot of damage quickly over time. There was more leaf-based platforming and sending hound eyes to the Shadow Realm before we reached our first objective-based puzzle in Zen. I ended up dying once in this section through no fault of my own.
No other reason?
So I ended up doing one of these sections twice. The first one was as simple as avoiding some barnacles, the second giving me flashbacks to the nuke room in the facility. Naturally, of course, I peacefully put down some more hound eyes, lost the hat as karma for my actions, killed them again because I refused to learn from my actions. The third section was dealing with more fucking bull squids. And finally, the leaf door had opened for us to progress had it not been for the funniest enemy waiting for us behind the door. I fought an uphill battle dealing with Xenian plant life, hound eyes, alpha hound eyes, and this damn hat was a pain in the ass. I pushed forwards to the basalt columns, which meant we could deal with the teleporter section, which, again, isn't really difficult since we're past all the enemies. Entering through a tunnel, we're met with a new obstacle, underwater barnacles. This water section is filled with them. It's also filled with more of the ichthyosaurs from earlier. Opting to be ambivalent towards their existence, I send them to the cold dark hell from whence they spawned to make my way through the next hurdle. This bridge to the next location is covered in hound's eyes, which, if you'd remember, which you should, hound eyes make carrying this hat a complete and utter nightmare to transport. I went back and forth taking out hound eyes one at a time before deciding at the end it would just be easier to embrace my inner pirate software and just run away from the combat to save my face. However, I would never admit to doing such wrongdoing or such crimes. I recovered a bunch of health and suit energy before entering into the structure. It was at this point I decided to stop streaming the rest of this challenge, as I didn't have the energy to entertain an audience while doing this challenge anymore. Inside the structure was a portal to open, and doors that wouldn't allow the hat through. So I begrudgingly left Mr. Hat in the main chamber as I went down to activate the 3 beams. First part was simple cable management, followed by a trip outside where I fed the natural wildlife. Just had to do that.
Nature is amazing.
I'm 60% sure I did this next part incorrectly, but I blew up the barnacles on the other side of this holographic door using my trusty RPG, and it opened so I could progress. The next area had more of the exploding plants. Already feeling the relative shelf shock of dealing with these enough times, I was extra careful to avoid popping these. After causing a light explosion behind closed doors, we step outside for a brief moment, step back in to see another fucking bull squid. Taking him out and aligning the crystals and cables, I jump across the chasm and reunite with Mr. Hat. After a 15-minute makeout session with this piece of purple fabric, we activate the portal and leap through, bringing us to the next major hurdle, Gonarch's lair. Flying out of the tunnel, I made it to the first combat arena, which needed multiple activations of the basalt pillars to start the boss fight. This gave me enough time to scrounge together the ammo it needed, and to find a safe place to put the hat before the giant titted spider herself appeared. The first fight with Gonarch isn't anything special. My only concerns during this encounter was if the bitch-ass arachnid launched Mr. Hat into the stratosphere, which fortunately she didn't. I grabbed Mr. Hat and chased her down to finish the job, only to realize I was not the hunter, but rather the one being hunted. This first area presented a new problem. Thick, spiderweb doors that required more than a crowbar to destroy, having to drop the hat and shoot the exposed methane gas tubes in the process. While not overly annoying, it was pace-breaking enough to be noticeable. From the adjacent cliffside, Gonarch spits what I hope is just spiderwebs in my general direction as I run along the narrow pathway to get as far away as legally possible. There were several instances of this until Gonarch finally caught up with me, demanding to know where her child support money is. Being the deadbeat scientist I am, I responded by telling her, "New phone, who dis?" Not liking my outdated jokes, she chases me down while holding a slipper, and I'm just left here questioning what my life has become. Managing to give her the slip, I blew up some white crystals and pressed even further down, continuing through these winding caverns until I reached the arena of our final showdown. Putting the hat next to my ammo catch for convenience, I started absolutely wailing on Gonarch with every weapon I have on hand, occasionally peering over to make sure the hat hasn't been sent packing back to Earth. The floor collapses, and under the immense weight of my big fat ass after too much Five Guys, and mild panic sets in for exactly 5 seconds as I scramble to locate the hat. Of course I find it, not wanting this annoying ass arachnid to bother me anymore. I kill her and make my leave to Interloper. The very start of this chapter had the tentacles from Blast Pit blocking my way, and not wanting to deal with this shit anymore, I died to them a minimum of 1 time before getting past them and reaching the bottom of the structure. After some alien vent navigation, the door is opened by some friendly Vortigons who I heroically decided to try and spare where I could throughout this chapter, because carrying this hat to the final boss wasn't punishing enough. Of course, in trying to spare them, I also have their lives put at risk as controllers spawn in and possess the poor bastards. I lose the hat in the process. After reloading the save, I changed literally nothing of what I did except for putting the hat in a slightly safer location to go full Ghostbusters on the controllers. Ignoring the thousands of dollars in property damage I caused to the Vortigons, I took the conveniently placed elevator. This section didn't give me too much trouble. It was basically the equivalent of running away from your sticky-handed, open-mouth coughing iPad baby cousin, except nothing like that because these fuckers are huge and have flamethrowers. After avoiding all known death, we reached the foreshadowing I had mentioned earlier. These bounce pads. For some reason, I have no idea why, the hitbox on the bounce pads caused the hat to freak out, and I almost lost the hat several times during this mad dash. Thankfully, there weren't too many reloads to save it, but that's not the end of this nightmarish trampoline. Passing the trampoline of doom, I make my way inside the Suez Canal and find my way into the factory, where Monster Energy is made. Being the tech support for the Vortigons, I of course overload the machines and pop the intestines that overflow with that green nectar and summon more controllers, who I give the little brother treat. Going a little further forward and taking an embarrassing amount of time to solve a simple puzzle, I do some more plug insertion and of course kill more fucking controllers. I navigate the canals as safely as possible, gripping onto the hat, which is really starting to smell like sulfur at this point. We find our way to the entrance of the alien grunt facility. The end is in sight. Pressing past some summoned grumps who wanted to ask about my car's extended warranty, we reach the roof where my glue-on gun is fueled with unlimited energy, which is really well timed as more enemies spawn just to piss me off. After giving them the same treatment low-tier God gives to his daughter, finally we've reached the inside of the plant. We're extraordinarily close to the Nylymph now. Entering into the teleporter hat first, this section was time consuming, but navigating with the hat was a breeze because there wasn't much combat. At first. After doing some sick as f*** dodging moves in this laser chamber, we're spit out into our main conveyor chamber, which took me a couple of tries? Okay, it took me a ton because I either lose the hat or lost my life. I finally reached a safe space and immediately saved, and so I wouldn't have to do that shit again. Finally, I reached the part that sucked the most because of the hat bounce I mentioned earlier. I had to jump and disable these barriers in order to access the higher levels. However, they required me to shoot these red vessels here, and if you've been paying attention, you'll recognize the problem here. If I drop the hat in a bad spot, it will just jump and fall all the way out of reach. No lie, it took me over 12 minutes to get through this section. What I ended up doing, which worked quite well, was putting the hat in the healing chamber here and picking it back up and saving each time to open all these barriers. Finally passing through it, I earned the pacifism achievement, which means no more Vortigaunts will spawn from here on out. After taking 3 tries to get through this particular vent system, I drop onto a moving platform and destroy the blue crystals being spawned by controllers. This section wasn't too hard at the start, it was actually pretty fun. The challenge started when we reached the final stop on the elevator ride, where all the controls are now protected by shields. This part took several reloads to get it right, but eventually I put the hat in a spot where the controllers couldn't attack it, and dealt with them accordingly. But of course, that wasn't the end, they wanted more of the Freeman smoke, so I sent them to the cold dark hell from whence they came. Detroit. After long last, I reached the final climb. The end of this challenge is in sight. I cautiously platformed to the final tower, reflecting on the journey for exactly 7 seconds before throwing the hat through the portal and leaping through myself. The Nylymph was waiting for me, and I was ready for him. It was a long fought battle, taking everything I had to pop that oversized boil on his shoulders he calls a head, until finally, it all went white, and a Steam achievement popped into the corner of my screen. The Rarest Specimen was secured, and the G-Man arrived to congratulate me. Because I was using the Half-Life Alyx model, the hat actually wasn't on his head, but it still gave me the special cutscene of the Vortigaunt putting it on at the end. And that is it. I just beat Black Mesa's Rarest Specimen Steam achievement, and freed Fettuccine Alfredo in the process. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of another video. If you enjoy this kind of content, hit that like button down below. Alternatively, if you didn't like it, press the dislike button and go to the comments and tell me all the other ways I'm a massive fuckhead. I want to thank $1 Million Bill for giving me the opportunity to host this special episode of Challenge Chronicles. Be sure to subscribe to both of our channels as we'll be doing content together more often in the future. Anyways, that's all from me. Thanks for tuning in to Challenge Chronicles, and I'm out of here.